As we approach Independence Day, where America declared independence from a monarch, it is not without some sobering irony that the United States Supreme Court has just ruled that Donald Trump is above the law, or any president for that matter. The Supreme Court ruled that Donald Trump has absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for all official acts he took while in office. The vote was 6-3, with all three of the Democratic appointed justices dissenting, and the right-wing supermajority finding that Donald Trump has absolute presidential immunity and that he should be given a major presumption as well that his conduct was official in nature and therefore subject to immunity. We will break it down. But as the dissent states, it is with fear for our democracy that I dissent, is what Justice Sotomayor, joined by Justice Kagan and Justice Jackson, stated. As this order is now being felt across the country and frankly across the world, it's also worth reflecting on what Donald Trump was posting over this weekend. It was post after post after post after post, not only sending messages to the Supreme Court in his posts, but also making posts that Liz Cheney is guilty of treason and should be tried before military tribunals that are televised. By the way, Donald Trump would have absolute presidential immunity for that. And if he killed Liz Cheney and massacred all of his political opponents under the current Supreme Court ruling, he would be absolutely immune from that. Donald Trump also posted QAnon memes over the weekend, where we go one, we go all, which is the slogan of the death cult, QAnon, and that's what Donald Trump was doing. But for the corporate media, I think their focus was more on the fact that President Biden is 81 years old. He stutters and had a bad debate performance. Mind you, Donald Trump had an awful debate performance as well, wouldn't answer a single question. But because President Biden looked old and frankly was not great during the debate, would be putting it as an understatement, that's all the media focused on, not the fact that Donald Trump is stating that he wants to be a dictator, that he wants to kill his political opponents, and that the Supreme Court just gave him the green light to do so. One of the things, though, I noticed this weekend and into today, which is not the punditry class, but that the real Americans, that people who have been impacted positively by President Biden's policies, whether it's military vets, whether it's women, whether it's seniors, whether it's people whose drug prices are now significantly lower, whether it's students who had their debt forgiven. I could go on and on and on through the list. More people who have gotten jobs through the infrastructure project. People are rallying behind President Biden, who, for them, having these discussions is not an academic exercise, but it's a matter of life or death. American people remember what it was like to live under Donald Trump, despite the fact that corporate media and Trump wants to wave that Men in Black wand and pretend what happened didn't take place. And Americans recognize that right now America is leading the world in every positive economic category, and that actually impacts people's lives. And that if Donald Trump were to be elected, it's going to impact people's lives. People are going to die because of that madman, and that's not hyperbole. People get it, and people are rallying behind President Biden as a result. While all of that's going on as well, you have Donald Trump sending his kids, like Don Jr., to the Middle East, where they are profiting off of Donald Trump's deals and relationships and selling the United States of America piece by piece to the highest bidder. First, Don Jr. Was bragging about a deal he did in Oman with a Saudi real estate development fund. And then he's been bragging about doing a deal today with Saudi Arabia directly. The Trump organization announced more deals with the Saudis, who bragged previously that Jared Kushner was in their pocket and gave them a kill list in addition to other classified information. That was at least the claim that was being made. We'll talk about that and more here on the MeidasTouch Network. I'm Ben Meiselas, joined by my younger brother, Jordy Meiselas. Brett is off for the day, and we will miss Brett today. But a day also, Jordy, I feel bad because I would normally start off saying happy birthday, Jordy.
Tough to really celebrate right now, Bate. I agree. You set me up for not failure there by not saying that, because I would have been like all happy and smiley. And today is certainly not a day for that, given the latest Supreme Court news. But I do want to start off with a bit of gratitude to the Meidas Mighty, to the MeidasTouch community out there. Thank you all so much for the birthday wishes, especially on a day like today. Like, it meant a lot. I'm so glad that this community could really rally around, just being good people, like, at the end of it. And that's just such an amazing thing to feel and be able to experience. So every time I saw the happy birthday messages, I really appreciate it. And more on that maybe in the after show, Ben. But for this show, I want to start off, and I just want to say something here. Look, to the podcasters and the pundits and the publishers who are still beating on the drum of replace Joe Biden and taking on that narrative. Like, I just need you to do me a favor. Let's just check your privilege at the door, because what you've shown and exposed about yourself there is that you actually don't care who wins this election. That's what it feels like, that you deep down, you think that your life actually won't change that much if it's a Trump presidency or a Biden presidency. And what you're willing to do, you're willing to roll the dice and ignore every expert and historical data point that shows that replacing an incumbent is absolutely the wrong thing to do. And you're just willing to roll the dice and say, let's see what happens. The Meidas Mighty, they know better. Real ones who consider themselves pro-democracy knows better. You don't run away at the first sight of problems. You hang in there. You figure it out. When you get knocked down, you get back up. Ben.
Look, after the debate, I didn't sugarcoat it. We went live right after, and I said that was pretty bad. I said, first and foremost, Donald Trump was horrible. Donald Trump looked like a maniac. He did not answer any question and lied the entire time. But I was very clear. I wasn't hiding it. I was like, Biden crushed it. All the kind of Trump, MAGA fans go, oh, he did such a good job. What a great debate. He did horrible. But let's face it, President Biden had an awful debate. I think President Biden recognizes that. It was certainly an off night. He did not do well. And why do I say it was an off night? Where am I getting that from? Because I like to look at the track record of somebody. And I know how the right wing leads these narratives, and then the corporate media is kind of too feeble to push back, or perhaps it's in their own self-interest, being run by their own corporate benefactors to push these things. But under any other circumstance, the media used to every day when the stock market would have an up day. When Trump was in office, all you would hear is Donald Trump is helping the stock market. We're living through an economic boom, when all of the economic metrics were actually not that. Like, just think about the stock market alone, which, by the way, should never be an indicator, though, of overall economic growth. But my point is, when Trump was in office, that was the metric. If the stock market was up, whoa, Trump is crushing it. So use Trump's metric, which I don't want to use. I'm going to use other metrics soon, but use Trump's metric. Under that, President Biden has nearly like 2x. It's like double the stock market now versus what it was under Donald Trump. So let's just start with that. And then every other metric, whether it is the lowest unemployment ever, whether it's wages being up, whether it's the fact that America for the first time is energy independent, whether it's the fact that our GDP is growing faster than China. It's always like, oh, China's eating us up, China this, China that. America's growing faster than China under President Biden. There's been a renaissance of high-tech jobs as well in the United States, not by accident, not by mistake, but because there are policies put in place, like the CHIPS Act, where President Biden said, you know what, during COVID, one of the reasons we suffered so much economically is because those semiconductors that are in everything that we use are being made overseas. And we, the United States of America, are so dependent for overseas semiconductors. let's invest here in the United States and make the United States semiconductor industry the envy of the world. So President Biden did that. And what happened? Booming right now in our semiconductor industry. It's why every month the jobs report, almost every month, has exceeded all expectations. And then there's like that one day, it's always like a Friday, right at the beginning of the month or the end of the month, where they'll do a new jobs report. And we at the MeidasTouch Network talk about this on a lot of our episodes, but oftentimes it only gets like noticed for like that 1 hour when the jobs report is announced. Then it's like, all right, let's move on to talking about all these other issues. And then you go through those other issues and you're like, okay, so we want to talk about immigration. You mean to tell me where President Biden supported the bipartisan border bill that was led by James Lankford, an Oklahoma conservative, as actual conservative as you get? President Biden let James Lankford lead the negotiations. We had a deal. And Trump said, you know what? Let's kill the deal because I want to run on the pain and suffering of the American people. Whereas President Biden, like he did with the CHIPS Act and the PACT Act and the Infrastructure Act and the Inflation Reduction Act and the PACT Act, he pushed forward legislation that benefited the people. So Biden wanted to do that again on immigration. And Trump's like, yeah, let's just create havoc and let's create issues. So I could go around and give my traveling fascist circus events that I call speeches and then complain and whine about the border and that things are not getting done. But if you just look at all of the objective metrics, things are good under Biden. If they weren't, and then I saw Biden do bad in a debate, that would move me differently, right? If I was like, oh, things are really bad. He's been a very bad president, but I'm on the fence with this debate right now. How's he going to do? And then let's say Trump did well and he did awful. That makes a difference to me. Trump did horrible. Biden did horrible. But Biden is a great person and has done great things. Then we saw Biden the next day in North Carolina. And he was great. He was exceptional in North Carolina and gave a great speech. So ultimately, I'm left with this idea of Trump was a horrible debater and lies and is a maniac. Biden was a horrible debater, but has achieved great things. Where do I lean there? Where do I side? And that's ultimately why I netted out right after. And I was like, you know what? Let me see where the data develops. Let me see how things are going, because my initial gut reaction was not to run away or not to be like, oh, my initial gut reaction is to think about all the great things that Biden's done in our country. And so what I think we are seeing is that the data has not moved the current race in any major way. There were some polls that came out right after that showed Biden up a little. There were some that showed Trump up a little. But by and large, they're all within the exact same range that they were before. There's still this large group of undecided or independent voters that are out there. I'm not even fully confident, as I've always stated before, of the polls as a intelligible metric in the first place, given what we've seen with the actual data in primaries, where we've seen about 20% of the Republican Party as a protest vote against Donald Trump because of Trump's threat to democracy, and President Biden consolidating base support in all of the primaries.
How dare you bring data to a polls conversation? What's wrong with you? I mean, it's really, truly unbelievable what we're seeing here. And to your point exactly, Ben, like I would rather judge President Biden off of 3.5 years of concrete resume and building up America back from how decimated it was under Donald Trump over a 90-minute debate. So I could not agree with you more there, Ben. Well put, big bro.
Well, take a look at just the posts that Donald Trump was making over just this past weekend alone. Like, I don't want to live in a country, setting everything else even aside, but I'm going to go into those other things in a moment, but where someone's out there behaving in this way. Because if someone behaved like this in a large corporation, medium-sized corporation, small corporation, nonprofit, family-owned business, just like a social club, a gathering of people, if somebody just started showing up like at like a party, a friend's house who had a get together, and somebody started like behaving like this, you'd be like, yo, what's up with this person? Like, there's something wrong with this person. What's going on? So why give the nuclear codes to somebody like this? Like, just let's go through to some of these posts that he's made. He makes this one. Elizabeth Liz Cheney is guilty of treason. Retruth if you want televised military tribunals. Televised military tribunals. Trump is posting that. How about Donald Trump post this? Where we go one, we go all, which is the QAnon slogan. Donald Trump has posted since he started that Trump Media Truth Social thing. He's posted close to 2,000 QAnon memes or amplified QAnon accounts. 2,000 times. How there isn't one story on that by any corporate media. Oh, by the way, the person leading the Republican Party posts on a daily basis QAnon memes where we go one, we go all over and over again. The storm is coming and things like that. He posts this. This is all post. I'm only going to show you a handful, but Trump posts like hundreds of these things in a day, hundreds. He goes, I will totally obliterate the deep state, is what he posts. Then he posts this. I stand with Steve Bannon. Juan Merchan, the same crooked judge that convicted Trump, has now sentenced Steve Bannon to 4 months. They can't even spell right. Steve Bannon to 4 months in prison. If you want this corrupt globalist judge removed and charged, read truth. By the way, Jordy, you know who the judge is who sentenced Steve Bannon to 4 months? Guess who it was? It was not Justice Juan Merchan. You know who it was?
Who was
it was federal judge Carl Nichols. You know who appointed federal judge Carl Nichols?
Who?
Donald Trump. A Trump appointee presided over the Bannon case. He was the one who made the decision of this sentence. But of course, they lie. And let's just attack Juan Merchan and say it was that judge who did it. Lie after lie. Could you imagine if President Biden made a post like that?
Just
about
one
a judge in Hunter Biden's case or something? Like, just imagine if Biden posted that one thing attacking a judge in a case of Hunter Biden. I'll tell you how people would react. We know how people would react when President Biden stutters and doesn't give a good debate. Trust me, how people would react if he posted one meme of QAnon. And by the way, if he posted one meme of QAnon, I would join the chorus of people saying, get out of here. What are you doing?
We'd be out. We'd be out. Ben, where are the think pieces here? Where are the heavy-minded think pieces, Ben, of Donald Trump should resign for posting the QAnon memes, for saying that Liz Cheney should be tried in a tribunal? Are you like, how bizarre of a country is this where we just allow a full leader of an entire party, Ben, to just spew just such vitriol? This man hates the country. He doesn't stand for anything. And that's why the SCOTUS decision today, Ben, is that much more jarring.
There were two good op-eds that I read, and one selfishly is ours. The other one is the Philadelphia Inquirer, which said that Donald Trump needs to resign for the good of the country immediately. Good for the Philadelphia Inquirer for writing that. And they said he supports insurrectionists. He wants to overthrow our democracy. He says he wants to be a dictator on day one. He's a convicted felon. He led an insurrection. He's an adjudicated sexual assaulter. He's on videotape bragging about sexually assaulting women. I mean, he bragged before about giving classified information to Russia. By the way, like, people don't even talk about this thing. Like, people don't talk that in May of 2017, the first people that Donald Trump invited to the White House were like Putin's top two advisors, and they came into the White House. Donald Trump gave them classified information and then said that he had the absolute right to give them classified information. He said, and Trump posted about it. It's on Twitter. Like, Trump, go find it. Trump said it. And Trump said, well, I wanted them to help with ISIS and I wanted them to help with terrorism. So that's why I gave them information. So anyway, the first one was Philadelphia Inquirer. The other one, Ron Filipkowski, our editor-in-chief at MeidasNews.com. He said that for the good of the country, a lot of these pundits need to resign because they both sides the issue. They don't give President Biden the credit where President Biden actually deserves credit for piloting our economy in this country out of COVID and into significant economic benefits that we're experiencing now. Things aren't perfect. They definitely aren't. But by every objective economic metric that's normally used to assess these things, America's number one. America's leading the world. There's the soccer tournament obviously going on right now, and it would be like the number one team that keeps on winning based on all the objective criteria, scoring goals. Yet the pundits go out there and say, yes, they may be winning, but I don't know. I think they're really bad. It's like, what are you basing that on? If you're basing them versus everybody else, they're number one. America's number one right now in all of the criteria. You even go to like the traditional like Republican criteria. And I'm not talking about the fact that America's leading the world when it comes to climate change now, which is one of the most important things. And Donald Trump claims that climate change doesn't even exist. So President Biden has managed to be a leader in the world on climate change, as well as the fact that President Biden broke OPEC. He broke the OPEC Middle East oil cartel and got them to, they were trying to spike the price per barrel to $100. And Biden got them to basically reduce it to $70 by flooding the market with American oil. America's the number one producer of oil in the world right now, producing more oil than any nation in the history of the world. Selling high, buying low, and making a massive profit for our country, strategically using our strategic reserves to make money like a business person. But he never gets credit for that. He never gets any credit for that at all. And then the pundits not calling Donald Trump out when he's found liable for rape. I mean, just, well, it's not a big deal. Donald Trump says fake news, so maybe we can't challenge it. He says fake news. He's an adjudicated sexual assaulter. A jury found that he committed sexual assault and then defamed his sexual assault victim over and over again. Another court found that he's responsible for $500 million in civil fraud. Another jury convicted the Trump organization of tax fraud. Another criminal jury, convicted Donald Trump of falsification of business records. And you don't hear a peep out of the media. And so Ron Filipkowski wrote that op-ed, which I thought was a very powerful one as well, saying you pundits need to resign because your first instinct is to, one, turn against Biden, prop up Donald Trump. But then again, for them, that's their, they love their Trump money. They love writing about it. They love the drama and the access. Our democracy be damned. But that's why we've developed the MeidasTouch network. That's why we've created this network, because it is so important that we, create another avenue for consuming pro-democracy content, Jay.
Ben, absolutely. And look, it's not even a hypothetical anymore about how would Donald Trump perform if he were president versus how would President Biden continue to perform. The resumes are there. We know how Donald Trump performed. It was a disaster for this country. And we know what President Biden has done now to take us out of that dark time. And these pundits, I've lost so much respect, Ben, from some people who I actually used to kind of quasi-admire. But to your point, the mass have been exposed, right? Like, it's very clear who just wants to continue to take that Trump money versus people who actually want to report with data and historical context.
You would think that one very basic metric of a civilized society being able to, function is whether or not there is toilet paper on the shelves. Okay. I mean, at a very bare minimum, when Trump was in office, there was no toilet paper. He told us
when Trump was in office, there were trucks of bodies, just like trucks filled with bodies because the morgues couldn't contain them because of his mishandling on COVID. Unbelievable.
And by not empowering scientists, by him inserting himself into the decision-making hierarchy versus allowing scientists to do their thing, and him saying, inject yourself with ivermectin or inject yourself with bleach, and like a miracle, it's all going to go away and we're good. We've gotten through it, and just constantly lying like he does about everything. And then I mean, number one, the economy was heading in a horrible direction under him before COVID, number one. But number two, the way both the pundits and people in general sometimes like, well, things were good before COVID, but then COVID hit, and so we shouldn't judge him by we're supposed to judge him like I mean, you were in office. We should judge you by how you handle your crisis. Chamberlain was really good, but for the way he appeased Hitler. Otherwise, Chamberlain was really strong on foreign policy. Then there was you did it. You were in charge. The buck stops with you. But over and over again, when it comes to this MAGA Republican Party or the Republican Party, they used to say, pull yourselves up by the bootstraps. Now they are the whiniest party that now when push comes to shove, they whine and complain and they don't like the rules. So they crush the rules. And then they say, you know what? We'll just give you immunity. We'll just give you immunity. You're free. You can do whatever you want. Go ahead. And I want to break down the ruling today, but I thought it was important that we start the way we started the show with just some good old common sense. And what we just talked about wasn't even like political. It should just be like common sense, like, yo, what's up right now? Let's chat. But I want to then get into what the Supreme Court ruling was. I want to be very technical and let you know what it is that they were saying, what its implications are regarding some of the other cases. I want to remind everybody as well to check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. It is so important right now. We continue to grow this independent media platform. We do not have outside investors. So one of the ways we grow this thing is through patreon.com/MeidasTouch. So please, if you can, become a member. Let's continue to grow this together. We'll continue to build our team here. We'll be right back after our first break from some of our sponsors.
Hey, Midas Mighty, with all these videos that I've been doing recently, and as I get a little bit older, it's important that I take care of my body, take care of my health, just be a little bit more intentional with the way I live. It's why I eat Mosh bars daily. Mosh was founded by Maria Shriver and her son, Patrick Schwarzenegger. Their mission was to create a conversation about brain health through food education and research. You see, Maria's father suffered from Alzheimer's, and since then, she and her son Patrick have dedicated themselves to finding ways to help other families with this debilitating disease. So they joined forces with some of the top scientists and functional nutritionists to go beyond your average protein bar with 10 delicious flavors, including 3 that are plant-based. Each Mosh bar is made with ingredients to support brain health like ashwagandha, lion's mane, collagen, and omega-3s. And now, Mosh has a new look and new formulation featuring a game-changing brain-boosting ingredient you're not going to find in any other bar. Mosh is now the first and only food brand boosted with Cognizin, a premium nootropic that supplies the brain with a patented form of cytokine. I've absolutely loved the flavor of their banana bread bars, and nothing feels better than getting a nutritious energy kick while knowing it's supporting my brain health. So if you want to find ways to give back to others and fuel your body and your brain, Mosh bars are the perfect choice for you. Go to moshlife.com/Midas, save 20% plus free shipping on either the bestsellers trial pack or the new plant-based trial pack. That's 20% off plus free shipping on either the bestsellers or plant-based trial pack at moshlife.com/Midas. Thank you, Mosh. That's moshlife.com/Midas. Thanks for sponsoring this episode. I know from a lot of the emails that you send me that a lot of you watching and listening are entrepreneurs. You run your own business, and I run a business too, the MeidasTouch Network. So I know how hard it is to manage your numbers, manage the trends in the market, and budget everything. Your business gets to a certain size and the cracks start to emerge. Things you used to do in a day are now taking a week. You have too many manual processes and you don't have one source of truth. If this is you, you need to know these 3 numbers: 37,000, 25, and 1. Okay, 37,000. That's the number of businesses which have upgraded to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, streamlining accounting, financial management, inventory, HR, and more. 25. NetSuite turns 25 this year. That's 25 years of helping businesses do more with less, close their books in days, not weeks, and drive down costs. And one, because your business is one of a kind. So you get a customized solution for all of your key performance indicators, KPIs, in one efficient system with one source of truth. Manage risk, get reliable forecasts, and improve margins. Everything you need to grow all in one place. The power of having all the information in one place to make better decisions and the unprecedented offer NetSuite is providing has been a game changer for us here at MeidasTouch, and I think it will also be a major game changer for you and your business. Right now, download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist designed to give you consistently excellent performance absolutely free at netsuite.com/Meidas. That's netsuite.com/Meidas, netsuite.com/Meidas to get your own KPI checklist. That's netsuite.com/Meidas. Check it out.
Welcome back.
Shout out to our pro-democracy sponsors, y'all. Shout out Mosh, Maria Shriver, big fan of MeidasTouch, big fan of Maria's here. We are, so definitely check out those bars. They're absolutely delicious. And I tell you guys this every time, NetSuite, they are just amazed about how many people visit that website after the shows. They just, every time, they're like, how are you doing this? So do me a favor, click on the link right now, NetSuite, check out their KPI checklist, download it. It's very useful. It's been very useful for us. And use the discount code for Mosh because it's absolutely delicious and you'll love it. Ben.
So before the Supreme Court's decision today on absolute presidential immunity, it's been in general just a horrific term where they've made horrible ruling after horrible ruling. Like they recently overturned the Chevron precedent, something called Chevron deference, where administrative agencies used to be given deference to construe their own enabling statutes, like the EPA and the FTC and the SEC would be given deference by the court in order to apply their expertise in areas like helping the environment and stopping pollution or going after fraudsters. Well, Supreme Court, there's no such thing as Chevron deference anymore, overturned 40 years of precedent and just basically gutted administrative agencies, which were created because of the increasingly complex issues that are developing in modern times, sending administrative agencies into total chaos. There was another decision by the Supreme Court called Jarchese versus the SEC, where the Supreme Court basically overruled the entire way the SEC adjudicates civil enforcement actions, allowing fraudsters and people who have engaged in civil fraud and securities violations that the SEC would be prosecuting for civil enforcement actions to basically get away with it. There was the bump stock case where the Supreme Court said that bump stocks are okay, put bump stocks back on the market. It was stopped after the Vegas shooting, but the Supreme Court and specifically the judges that Trump appointed said bump stocks are cool. There was another case involving the EPA and what's called the good neighbor rule, which was an EPA policy to stop kind of harmful emissions going from one state to the other state. The Supreme Court continued to block the EPA from trying to stop pollution. So you had all of those orders being handed down. And then today you had kind of the final icing on this fascist cake from the right-wing Supreme Court. These rulings are coming from the right-wing Supreme Court. Oh, I forgot to mention the Fisher case, which is dismissing the obstruction of official proceeding charge against hundreds of insurrectionists. The Supreme Court said those were improperly charged, set hundreds of insurrectionists free. And then today you have the absolute immunity decision. The Supreme Court waits until the very final moment and finds that Donald Trump is entitled to absolute presidential immunity. And the ruling on absolute presidential immunity went even further than what Donald Trump requested. The ruling says that if there is something called a core presidential power, and then a president is entitled to absolute immunity on that. If there is the next level of conduct called official conduct, which are just things that under Article 2 of the Constitution the president, does, or in furtherance of their core presidential powers, just things that you would expect a president to do. And an analysis has to be done there. And there should be a strong presumption that if the president does it, it's okay. And they should have absolute immunity for that. Official conduct gets absolute immunity. There can be no criminal charges against that type of conduct. Also, if conduct is official in nature or a core presidential power, it must be excluded from all trials, even if the conduct that, let's say, someone like Donald Trump is charged with is ultimately determined to be unofficial conduct. Let's say a judge, after going through all of this analysis where the Supreme Court says it's very limited for it to be unofficial. If the president does it while in office, it's probably subject to immunity, but perhaps it falls outside this outer perimeter, which the Supreme Court basically says almost everything a president does could be entitled to absolute presidential immunity. Well, you're not allowed to bring into the trial any evidence of official conduct. That's automatically excluded. So things that would be helpful or even necessary to help prove intent is going to be excluded from the trial. I'll give you, rather than a hypothetical, the real world example, the January 6th insurrection. So let's say that ultimately after the Supreme Court ruling, it goes back to the district court, and then the district court says, you know what, we've done our analysis. The conduct by Donald Trump was campaign-related conduct. It's not any type of official conduct. It falls outside the outer perimeter. Well, before we're going to get to that, it's going to be years of appeal now, because the Supreme Court's created this incredibly difficult web or morass of just incredibly difficult burden shifting for the government to have to be able to prove that it's unofficial conduct. But let's say they say, look, this was unofficial. Everything on January 6th was unofficial. Okay, well, what would be some of the key evidence that the government would want to introduce? Communications between Trump and Meadows, communications between Donald Trump and the DOJ, communications between Donald Trump and Pence, what Donald Trump was doing in the White House that day. Well, all of that then would be construed as likely official conduct, and then that would be excluded from the proceedings. So a jury would never even get to hear that. So the ability to prove the mens rea, or the mental state, which is necessary in a criminal case, is also rendered almost impossible for unofficial acts. So while, yes, technically all the Supreme Court held is that you get absolute presidential immunity if you're the president for official conduct, not for unofficial conduct. But the reality is, even if the acts are determined to be unofficial, well, that's going to take years to decide, and it's going to go back up to the Supreme Court before there's determinations there. And then even where it's determined to be unofficial conduct, you won't be able to bring in any of the other evidence that could be deemed official conduct, because that is subject to immunity. And just don't take my word for it and you go, oh, Ben, you're being hyperbolic. No. Let's take a look at what the actual court said, what the rulings are. So this was a 6-3 decision, and it was the right-wing Supreme Court justices, all 6, who granted absolute presidential immunity. And here is how Justice Sotomayor put it in her dissent. Never in the history of our republic has the president had reason to believe that he would be immune from criminal prosecution if he used the trappings of his office to violate the criminal law. Moving forward, however, all former presidents will be cloaked in such immunity. If the occupant of that office misuses official power for personal gain, the criminal law that the rest of us must abide will not provide a backstop. With fear for our democracy, I dissent. I've never seen an opinion have a dissent in the history of the Supreme Court that concludes with fear for our democracy, I dissent. Justice Sotomayor's dissent also says the following. Looking beyond the fate of this particular prosecution, the long-term consequences of today's decision are stark. The court effectively creates a law-free zone around the president, upsetting the status quo that has existed since the founding. This new official acts immunity now lies about like a loaded weapon, for any president that wishes to place his own interests, his own political survival, or his own financial gain above the interest of the nation. The president of the United States is the most powerful person in the country and possibly the world. When he uses his official powers in any way under the majority's reasoning, he now will be insulated from criminal prosecution. Orders the Navy SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival, immune. Organizes a military coup to hold on to power, immune. Takes a bribe in exchange for a pardon, immune, 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 immune. Let the president violate the law. Let him exploit the trappings of his office for personal gain. Let him use his official power for evil ends, because if he knew that he may one day face liability for breaking the law, he may not be as bold and fearless as we would like him to be. That is the majority's message today. Even if these nightmare scenarios never play out, and I pray they never do, the damage has been done. The relationship between the president and the people he serves has shifted irrevocably. In every use of official power, the president is now the king above the law. You have right there a Supreme Court justice saying that the majority just said that the presidency is now like a monarch, is just like a king, has absolute immunity, can order SEAL Team 6 or the military to assassinate and massacre anyone, political opponents, the media, whoever. And as long as they say it's an official act, you get absolute presidential immunity for it. As Asha Rangappa says, the court has handed Trump, if he wins this November, carte blanche authority to be a dictator on day one, and the ability to use every level of official power at his disposal for his personal ends without any recourse. The election is now a clear-cut decision between democracy and autocracy. Vote accordingly. Also, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson says the following in her dissenting opinion, footnote 5. To fully appreciate the oddity of making the criminal immunity determination turn on the character of the president's responsibilities, consider what the majority says is one of the president's conclusive and preclusive prerogatives: the president's power to remove those who wield executive power on his behalf. While the president may have the authority to decide to remove the attorney general, for example, the question here is whether the president has the option to remove the attorney general by, say, poisoning him to death. Put another way, the issue here is not whether the president has exclusive removal power, but whether a generally applicable criminal law prohibiting murder can restrict how the president exercises that authority. Kristen Farias writes, if I'm reading Trump v. United States correctly, a president scheming with his aides to cover up a break-in at the party headquarters of his political opponent is either absolutely or presumptively immune from federal prosecution. What a time to be alive. Going back to a statement by Asha Rangappa, she goes, according to the court, a president could literally provide the leader of a hostile adversary with intelligence needed to win a conflict in which we are involved, or even attack or invade the U.S. and not be prosecuted for treason because negotiating with heads of state is an exclusive Article 2 function, in case you were wondering. In other words, that's an official act or core presidential power. So if it's official or core presidential power, the character is not what matters and not the act itself. And as our editor-in-chief, Ron Filipkowski, says, if this language of this decision was applied to the actions of the German chancellor in 1942, the final solution, which culminated in the Holocaust, would be considered an official act conferring immunity from criminal prosecution to the executive. And so you also put that in light of Donald Trump's post that we talked about earlier, saying he wants to have televised military tribunals with people like Liz Cheney. And then Donald Trump's been posting the whole day, bragging about the Supreme Court's order and how the Supreme Court went even further than what Donald Trump asked for. And where they went further was by also saying, also evidence should be excluded from trials that involve unofficial acts if the conduct at issue that people want to introduce in the trial constitutes official conduct. So when it comes to the January 6th case, in Washington, D.C. federal court. That case is gutted. Potentially, special counsel Jack Smith will argue, as the Department of Justice and other civil litigants argued, I guess, in the Blassingame decision, that the conduct that Trump engaged in the January 6th insurrection fell outside the outer perimeters of official presidential conduct. And you could argue that the conduct is unofficial in nature because it was outside the scope of what Article 2 does. But that decision then is going to get appealed to the Supreme Court. That will take years to play out. And then, as I mentioned, even if that will be allowed, there's going to be so much evidence excluded that the case is kind of gutted. Also, then you have the case before Judge Eileen Cannon, which I think is also going to be gutted also. Donald Trump's going to say that, he believed it was an official presidential responsibility to pack up all of these things and to ship it to Mar-a-Lago, and that he should be entitled to immunity for that. That will then result in a ton of briefing. That will take, I think, years to play out before it gets to the Supreme Court again, and it will cause massive delay there. I think in Georgia, same thing. And I think it could potentially even have unintended consequences in the Manhattan District Attorney criminal case, because remember, there was evidence that was allowed in that case about meetings at the White House where David Pecker showed up with Michael Cohen, and that was allowed in. There was, Hope Hicks testified about what it was like working at the White House. Trump's assistant testified about working at the White House and how mail was sent to Donald Trump at the White House versus mail that was sent to Trump's bodyguard outside of the White House. And so I'm not giving, Trump's already posted, about this New York case. Not specifically what I'm saying, but it's not a secret what I'm saying. The Supreme Court gave him the roadmap, I think, to also now challenge the Manhattan criminal prosecution, even though the conduct at issue with Stormy Daniels predates what was in office. What Trump will argue is that there was evidence that was allowed in that should not have been allowed in because that constitutes official presidential conduct. And as a result, that needed to be excluded. So there needs to be a retrial or a new trial based on the Supreme Court's ruling, or there needs to be a stay of his prison sentence so there could at least be a determination by the Supreme Court. There's no way to sugarcoat this decision by the Supreme Court and what they did. It was raw political decision-making by them. I mean, if you think about it, as we head into Independence Day and you go back to the founding of our country, I mean, these Supreme Court justices want to say they're originalists or they're conservative. Well, the only thing that you're conserving, if you're a conservative, is the monarchy. And if you're saying you're an originalist, I guess you're going back to the origin before 1776. I guess you're going back to the monarchy. I guess you're an originalist in the sense of authoritarians, despots, and before we declared our independence. And that's just not right. That's a real issue. I guess they're saying that they're Magna Carta originalists, that they are Magna Carta originalists and Magna Carta conservatives and Magna Carta strict textualists. And I'm not being hyperbolic. That's what the ruling was, that the president is like a king, Jordy.
Ben, I appreciate that detailed breakdown. Look, there's been some hard truths on this episode, but the fact of the matter is, we're not ones to blow hopium in people's faces here. And so we've always stood behind, hey, we're going to let you know what the data says, and then we're going to go from there. But we're never going to lie to the Meidas Mighty and to the pro-democracy audience. Today was a tough freaking day, to say the least. And, this is why, folks, come November, the election is so crucial, right? Because you're not only just voting for President Biden in his reelection campaign, you're basically voting for the next 40 years of the Supreme Court, right? If Donald Trump gets elected, there's about 3 seats that'll probably be up for grabs, and then he'll replace them with almost immediately. And that will set the course of this country for another 40 years. So just think about that. And when we get down to it, it's not about stacking the court, guys, because that's not even a possibility, right? Just play that out. How does that happen? Someone has to propose it in Congress, then Congress has to pass it. Then it goes to the Senate where it needs a super majority, right? One, the House is controlled by the GOP. And the Senate's a 50-50 split at best. If you're going to even say we just need 50-50, which you don't, you need the supermajority, you need 60 there to get that passed. So it's not going to happen. That's not a route, stacking the court. The route is voting for President Biden come November. That's the only way to ensure that democracy is upheld. Ben.
Well, look, I mean, if you think about, go back to the Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump race and think about where we would actually be today if Trump didn't win. Think about where we'd be with the environment. Think about where we would be with gun control. Think about where we would be when it comes to, making sure people don't commit securities fraud. Think about where we would be in terms of democracy. Think about where we'd be in terms of healthcare and making access to healthcare more accessible and affordable. Like, these are real life or death issues. And what Republicans have been doing is trying to, the MAGA Republicans, that is, especially, dividing us and actually convincing people to vote for death over their own prosperous lives. The people are voting against their own interests over and over again because they get scared, because MAGA Republicans talk about bathrooms and woke this and CRT that, and the MAGA Republicans, talk about communism, fascism, Marxism. What do you think they're doing? All of the things that they're scaring you of, they're the ones actually doing it. And for all of the people who are like conservatives, like, your whole shtick was supposed to be small government. You just anointed dictators. I mean, think of that. How is less government giving someone the power of a dictator is such a bizarre concept to me. We'd be putting it lightly, but I think there is hope, and that's what I want to talk about as we move forward. What we can do, what we should do, how do we engage with this? And I want to let everybody know, personally, yes, this is a brutal ruling. But when we get brutal rulings like this, or when you get bad news like this, we could run away from it. We can just shut down and say, there's nothing we can do about it. That's what they want us to do. Fascism wants us to give up. They want us to tap out right now. Or we double down, we get stronger, we grow the pro-democracy movement, and that's what we have to do. We have to do it for ourselves, for our kids, for our grandkids, for the sake of our country. And that's what we're never going to leave you here at the MeidasTouch Network. We're always going to be by your side throughout this process, making sure our democracy survives. And that also starts, though, with education about what's at stake, though, and what these issues are, which is why we got to get very granular about it. I want to take our last quick break of the show. And when we get back, I want to discuss President Biden in North Carolina, Donald Trump in Virginia, Donald Trump's kids in Oman and Saudi Arabia. We'll be right back.
Have you heard that the flavored air category is quickly becoming the leading alternative to vaping and smoking? It's a whole new movement towards better habits, led by the sponsor of this video, Fume. Fume is an award-winning flavored air device. Flavored air isn't like vaping. If vapor was compared to sticky soda, Fume cores are closer to herbal teas. Fume has lots of delicious flavors to choose from, like crisp mint and orange vanilla. With flavored air, you can satisfy your oral fixation through a passive diffusion system that utilizes no electronics, vapor, or combustion. Fume draws flavor to your mouth. Fume fills the void ditching a bad habit can leave. You still have something to reach for. Fume is not a vape. There's no vapor, and you could use it anywhere. There's no nicotine. It's not addictive. The non-toxic flavors are a guilt-free alternative. Fume doesn't use any batteries, so you'll never need to charge it. The design is super sleek. It looks awesome, and you can truly feel the weighted high-quality design. One of the things about Fume is that it's made to fidget with, and it calms anxiety with magnets, snaps, and clicks. Fume continuously invests in third-party studies to ensure the safety of their products. Fume is also backed by doctors in the United States. My favorite Fume flavor is crisp mint. It is honestly delicious, and I couldn't recommend this more for anyone trying to quit their bad habit. Fume has served over 300,000 customers, and you can be the next success story. For a limited time, use my code MEIDAS, M-E-I-D-A-S, to get a free gift with your journey pack. So head to tryfume.com. That's TRYFUM.com. Tryfume.com. Use code Meidas or scan the QR code on screen to get a free gift with your order today.
Let's take a quick break to talk about our next sponsor, ZBiotics. If you're like me, you probably skipped a workout because of drinks the night before. Look, it happens, but if you're committed to your healthy routine, you need ZBiotics. ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. ZBiotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. It's designed to work like your liver, but in your gut where you need it most. Just remember to drink ZBiotics before drinking alcohol, drink responsibly, and get a good night's sleep to feel your best tomorrow. Recently, I was celebrating my anniversary, and I knew my wife and I were going to enjoy a lovely night of drinking at a local winery as instructed. I drank a bottle of ZBiotics before any alcohol, and I was amazed at how good I felt the next day. Give ZBiotics a try for yourself. Go to zbiotics.com/Meidas to get 15% off your first order when you use code Meidas at checkout. That's MEIDAS. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/Meidas and use the code Meidas, MEIDAS, at checkout for 15% off. Thank you, ZBiotics, for sponsoring this episode.
We
Let's
are
go.
back. Jordy.
Shout out ZBiotics. Shout out Fume. Fume's been a partner of ours for a while. Look, if you're looking to quit your bad habit and start a good habit, definitely check out Fume. They've been phenomenal. Links are in the description of the YouTube and the audio. Go click it. Use the promo code. ZBiotics was an original sponsor of the MeidasTouch podcast way back when, and they came back. They're like, hey, we want to come back and hang out with you guys. So I'm like, all right, come on. Check them out as well. They are phenomenal. It truly does work. I mean, Brett can certainly attest to it. I know I can attest to it. So check it out. Links in the description. You'll be seeing a lot more ZBiotics too on this network.
All right, let's talk about President Biden's speech in North Carolina, Donald Trump's speech in Virginia. I think it was such an obvious contrast on display right there. And this is the President Biden that I know. This is the President Biden that we've seen before. And I think it's important, when President Biden addresses, the fact that he isn't as young as he was. Again, it infuriates me to no end, the ageism that exists and that's been just embraced by corporate media and people in general. Just the straight up mockery and being cruel to older people when we should respect older people. It's a very bizarre thing.
And Ben, real quick, all the isms are bad, right? Ageism is arguably the dumbest one to go because guess what? Everyone gets old. So that's gonna be your take. That's you're inevitably gonna become an older person. And now you're just gonna take this bizarro narrative where you attack President Biden for his age.
Here, President Biden talks about he knows that he's not a young man. He doesn't speak as smoothly as he used to. He may not debate like he did when he was younger, but here's what he cares about: our democracy and helping people. Here, watch this clip.
Close with this. I know I'm not a young man. State the obvious. Well, I know. Well, I don't. Folks.
Powerful stuff right there. And then he went on to talk about what this election is about and the choices that we confront. And he says, this election's simple. Trump's going to destroy our democracy. Let's be very clear. Here, let's play this clip.
And we're still the beacon to the world. We can never give up what makes America, America. Yeah! Donald Trump is motivated by revenge and retribution. Well, revenge and retribution never built a damn thing. You and I, we Americans, are a nation of hope, optimism, and possibilities. That's what always built America. And that's going to continue to build America today. The choice in this election is simple. Donald Trump will destroy our democracy. I will defend it. So, folks, are you with me?
Yeah, he needs to do more events like that. And also, what we see is the base rallying around President Biden. And for all of the talk from the media, which is all BS, oh, Donald Trump's got the black vote now, and Donald Trump's got the Hispanic vote now, and the union workers like Donald Trump. Look, our country is big. So inevitably, you're going to be able, in a big country, to find people who will show up to represent perspectives that create a little bit of confusion about why people would be voting against their own interests. Often Donald Trump engages in these stunts, though. Oh, look at the black support I have. I'm going to a black church in Detroit. Never mind, it's filled up with all of his white MAGA supporters wearing their, MAGA hats and like cursing in places of worship and screaming Donald Trump's name in a house of worship. I mean, Donald, he just goes to churches and starts cursing now. Like it's a horrific thing. Or he goes to the black barber shop, but then the owner of the shop says, I wasn't told it was going to be like a political event. Or he goes to a Chick-fil-A and has someone who works for like a MAGA operative show up and give him a hug. And he goes, look, I'm at a Chick-fil-A and one black lady gave me a hug. Look I got black support. Like in a Chick-fil-A, and like just all of these like very offensive and just like racist things too. Oh, look, the black supporters like me because I'm indicted and that's why they support me. Look, I made a fake gold sneaker with fake red bottoms. Like what are you talking about? Then he goes out and he talks about in the debate and he emphasizes over and over again black jobs, and he's like, they're coming for your black jobs. Like, what the heck? What are you saying? They're coming for your black jobs? And the media then treats the American population like we're all dumb and like we didn't just hear that. Like how incredibly offensive it is. And so why I'm bringing this up is that the Democratic base rallies behind President Biden. Just think that we see that over and over again. And I think you see specifically, despite the fact that the media is saying, oh, black voters support Donald Trump, the people who are rallying, especially behind President Biden after that debate, I've seen increasingly have been black voters who have been incredibly supportive of President Biden and recognizing Donald Trump's entire career and life has been banning black people from his buildings, saying that the exonerated five should be executed, and an entire career that was built on some like horrifically like racist statements and conduct. So anyway, you see that. One more clip I'll show you of President Biden right here saying that one thing we did learn about Donald Trump is he won't respect this year's election outcome. Let's play this clip.
And most dangerously, though, we learned that Donald Trump will not respect this year's election outcome. He's still not respecting the last time out. Well, think about it. Every court in Nan ruled that it was a fair election. He's still denying it, still telling lies. 3 times Trump was asked last night by the moderators, would he respect the election results if he lost this time? 3 times he refused to answer. 3 times. Folks, Donald Trump refused to accept the results in 2020. We all saw what happened on January the 6th. It's a direct consequence of that. It was an international embarrassment. By the way, as I go to these international meetings, I know every major world leader, and I literally, because I've been around, as you might have noticed. But they asked me, did he really mean this? Was this real? It caused a constitutional crisis and international embarrassment.
That's the President Biden I know. Now, you can, if you want to clip the very end of it, where President Biden tripped up over his words and stuttered, and you want to focus on that moment and not focus on the fact that he's saying that the other guy, it's undisputed, does not support democracy, does not support free and fair elections. The other guy still claims that he won in 2020 when he was blown out. And the corporate media and the punditry class wants to talk about, oh, but did you hear it? There was 3 seconds there at the end where President Biden stuttered and he forgot what his words were. How about you focus on what he's actually saying and what the important implications are? Because guess what? Under that absolute immunity ruling that the Supreme Court just made, that means that Donald Trump can kill you, can shut down your media outlet. And what do you think the first thing this guy's going to do is? He's saying he's going to do it. He's saying he's going to obliterate you. What are you doing? You know, it's like he said obliterate, but I think what we need to focus on is President Biden did stutter, though. He did say I was going to be obliterated, Donald Trump, and that he would kill me. But let's focus more on that. Like, what in the world are you doing? You want to take a look at what Donald Trump's been saying at his events, though? I showed you what his posts were earlier. Take a look when Donald Trump was in Virginia. Here he was bashing his own former chief of staff, John Kelly. This is Trump's own chief of staff who was a general in the military, well-respected general, Trump's former chief of staff. And he said that Donald Trump called those who died fighting for our country suckers and losers. It was Trump's chief of staff who said it. And this is what Trump says about his own chief of staff. Here, play this clip.
General Kane, right? Raisin Kane. You know that story, Raisin Kane. He was great, great general, real general, not the television. We have a lot of television generals. They're no good. Like Milley. How about Milley? We had some, like the dumbest of them all, General Kelly. He didn't know. He was lost in the White House. That poor guy didn't know what the hell was happening. He was like a lost, we used to call him a lost soul.
So he attacks the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley. Then he attacks his own former chief of staff, General John Kelly, the people who worked for him. Then he goes and attacks Chuck Schumer and uses the term Palestinian as a pejorative and says Schumer's like a Palestinian now. Here, watch this. Here, play this clip.
Take a look at that. Look at a guy like Senator Schumer. I've always known him. I've known him a long time. I come from New York. I knew Schumer. He's become a Palestinian. He's a Palestinian now. Congratulations. He was very loyal to Israel and to Jewish people. He's Jewish, but he's become a Palestinian because they have a couple of more votes or something. Nobody's quite figured it out.
I mean, just think about what he's even, it's hard to even explain what he's saying. And then over here, you know how he's been talking about how he'd rather be electrocuted than eaten by sharks. He goes back into that here, but he talks about how now if you're on an electric plane, it may crash if it's not in front of the sun. Here, play this clip.
These guys, you'll never get them done. You'll never get them done. They don't have any clue. All they know is electric. They want electric army tanks. They want electric planes. What happens if the sun isn't shining while you're up in the air? Well, sir, I told you there'd be problems, sir. No, they want electric everything. They want electric boats. The problem, the boats, they don't float because the battery is so heavy, it sinks the boat. They say, we don't care, we want them anyway.
Okay, and then here he says that there's no such thing as global warming. Global warming's fine. Here, play this clip.
That's your threat, and we don't even talk about it. We never even met. Can you imagine this guy saying global warming's the greatest threat to our country? Global warming is fine. In fact, I heard it was going to be very warm today. It's fine. It's fine.
Global warming is fine. I heard it was going to be hot today. It's fine. And then he talks about his imaginary conversations with Hannibal Lecter and Silence of the Lamb. Here, play this clip.
Silence of the Lamb. The press always says, why does he ramble about Silence of the Lamb? The late, great Hannibal Lecter. He'd like to have you over for dinner. Did you ever? Don't do it. If he suggests, I'd like to have you for dinner, don't go. But these are the people that are coming into our country.
You hear him right there? I mean, by the way, this hasn't gotten like any significant attention, but I want to give a hat tip to Andrew Ladin for capturing this. When Trump was in Virginia, his plane was at Dulles, and guess what plane was right next to Donald Trump's plane? The Russian embassy plane lined up right next to Trump's airplane. And now one can say that's just a coincidence that they're lined up like that. But the Russian embassy plane was there, I think, to pick back up some diplomats. But odd that that plane was right there next to Trump's plane. And then afterwards, the United Arab Emirates plane came right next to all of them. So you had the UAE plane, and then you had the Russian embassy plane, and then you had Trump's plane all lined up right like that, right next to each other. I'll let you all decide what's going on there. While that's taking place, and while all the MAGA Republicans are, Hunter Biden this, Hunter Biden that, you have Trump's kids were in the Middle East capitalizing off of the quid pro quo deals that Jared Kushner and Trump made with the Saudis. And here, for example, is Don Jr. bragging about being in first class in this deal that he's making as he flies to Oman to build this project that's funded by the Saudis as part of this quid pro quo. Here, play this clip.
Guys, I just did a day trip to Dubai and Oman. We have a project in Oman, projects in Dubai, just checking in on them, the day job. Literally, I'm on the ground for 18 hours, and I think I did 30-something hours of flying. But if you're going to fly that much, this is a great way to do it. I'm in first class on Emirates, and this is sick. These beds lie down, go fully flat, the doors closed. You're in your entire enclosed cubbies. Pretty spectacular, great food, more legroom than I can know what to do with. And like I said, the beds fly out flat, and they even have mattresses to go on top of them. So if you're gonna do 18 hours on the ground, a day trip to the Middle East, this is the way to do it. Figured I had to share that one with you guys because I'm a reasonably spoiled individual, and this is still pretty spectacular. Have a good one, guys.
If you're gonna do a day trip to the Middle East to do a quid pro quo deal with the Saudis after giving them secrets, if you're gonna do a day trip, I'm a spoiled guy. I'm really spoiled. If you're running an organization that's a convicted felon and that's also been found civilly liable for fraud, and you're doing deals with the Middle East to trade off of things, and that's what you're gonna do, you're gonna want to be spoiled in first class. And then you have these MAGAs out there. Yeah, Don Jr. in first class. That's how you gotta roll, bro. Like, what? What
It's
about
the most pompous sounding voice too? Like he changed his whole voice. When you fly first class in Emirates, dude, what is wrong with you? And then Ben, you're right. Like Mr. and Mrs. Macedonia, I hope you're happy because that's where your funds are going. So he could continue to fly first class in Emirates. Unbelievable.
how dare we treat Don Jr. with anything but golden toilets in first class as the Trump organization makes millions of dollars grifting off of us. I think what we're going to have to do is buy another Trump flag pin with Trump's name on it
right now.
He's selling. I show this photo on my hot takes.
Yeah.
He on a daily basis now. He sells the American flag with his name on it and a pin, and it's the American flag and it has Trump on the flag, and he sells it for a little tiny pin, $500 to $1,000, so that I guess Don Jr. can enjoy flights.
Dude, that would almost be the equivalent if they put Trump's name on a Bible and sold it to his followers. Oh wait, they did that also.
Guys selling Bibles. I want to finally finish with the data though right here.
Yeah.
And I want to show you that this is a very distinguished historian, Professor Lichtman, and he has predicted the outcome of presidential races now like perfectly by looking at actual metrics of like where the economy is, how successful the presidency is. And he went on CNN, and this was actually one of the only good interviews I think I've seen on CNN in a very long time. So I thought I'd share this with you. Let's play it.
All of these pundits and pollsters and analysts that you see on all the cable channels and all the networks have no track record in predicting elections. And yet they come on and they claim they know how this debate is going to affect the outcome of elections. They have no idea. It's sports talk radio. It may be entertaining, but it has no scientific basis.
So what is the impact, you think?
Zero. Debates are not predictive of outcomes. Hillary Clinton won all 3 debates, still lost. John Kerry won all the debates, still lost. Barack Obama got trounced, 72 to 20% in the poll, worse than Biden, and went on to win. That's why we rely on the 13 keys which tap into the structure of how elections really work. And they show that Democrats' really only chance to win, contrary to everything you've heard, is with Biden running. Look at the incumbency key. Biden checks that off. The contest key, he checks that off. He was uncontested. It takes 6 keys to count out the White House party.
But you know,
that means
Alan,
of the remaining 11 keys, 6 would have to fall. Let me finish.
Yeah.
Biden doesn't run. They lose the contest key. They lose the incumbency, and only 4 more keys would have to fall.
I think that that's actually kind of what I was trying to get at here, is that the problem right now is that the Democratic Party is considering replacing Biden, mostly because it's unclear whether or not he actually physically can carry out the rest of this campaign and put up a fight against his opponent. So that seems like a fundamentally different thing than some of the items that you have in your rubric.
It's a huge mistake. They're not doctors. They don't know whether Biden is physically capable of carrying out a second term or not. Remember, a lot of folks were saying the same thing about Ronald Reagan, who was, 73, and age was very different then. And they said, he's not capable of carrying out another term. He won 49 states. So this is all foolhardy nonsense. The same pundits and pollsters who led us down the primrose path in 2016 are giving the Democrats horrible advice. This proves what I've been saying for years. Republicans have no principles. Democrats have no spine. Republicans are sticking with a blatant liar who lied for every 1 minute and 20 seconds of that debate. Donald Trump put out a lie. And by the way, lies stick. Debate performances can be overcome. And now the first sign of adversity, the spineless Democrats want to throw under the bus their own incumbent president. My goodness.
I thought that was powerful. I think that reflected, Jordy, your and my sentiments here. I do want to wish you a very happy birthday, Jay. And look, while we've tackled a lot of difficult topics, I do think, though, it is important not just to reflect on your birthday, but on normalcy and on family and on love and respect and compassion and the truth. Because more than talking about politics per se, what we want to rally this community around here are principles and values. And sticking to those principle and values, democracy, compassion, lifting each other up, supporting each other, supporting freedoms, and just trying to be helpful in replacing hate with love. And that needs to be talked about more and more and more. And we're going to continue to spread those values here and share that with others. And I think that's really what's important. And ultimately, I think that's what's going to win this. I think it's those values. And I think it's important that we share these episodes with others, let people know, make sure you're subscribed to this YouTube channel. If you can join us at Patreon, that would be great. But, we're in this together, and fascism relies on us to give up and to tap out. And that's what history shows. If we don't give up, if we don't tap out, if we rally together, then democracy is going to prevail. Jordy.
Absolutely, Ben. Couldn't have said it better myself. So thank you for that. And with that, shout out to the Midas Mighty!
The Midas Mighty standing strong against the fascists. We sing our song. We will get it right whenever.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the MeidasTouch Network. The film Against All Enemies, which I co-produced with Ben Meiselas and this network, has won awards around the world for its up-close portrayal of America's insurrectionist movement. It premieres in the U.S. on March 29th on Amazon and Apple TV. Go to AgainstAllEnemiesFilm.com or click the link below. But don't just watch Against All Enemies. Tell your friends about it. It's one more way to hold accountable those who threaten our democracy. Thanks, Meidas Mighty. Let's use our power well.